Hi, I'm Jenny Rushmore of Cashmere, and today I'm going to be showing you how to insert an invisible zipper. Now, invisible zippers have an unfair reputation in the sewing world for being super hard to sew, especially by beginners. But you know what? It really isn't that tricky. There are a few simple steps, and once you've tackled those and practiced a few times, you will be inserting invisible zips in your sleep. So, an invisible zipper, this flat side is the side that's going to be facing the right side of the garment. And the idea is that you sew the fabric close enough on this tape that you don't see the zipper at all. So you'll just see the pull, but you won't see the zipper. And on the back side, you can see this ridge. So this is where the teeth are, but they're pushed to the inside. So invisible zips, I think, are actually the easiest type of zip for a beginner. Even though sometimes, they have a scary reputation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to gently press the teeth away from this tape. This is called the zipper tape, which helps make it a little bit easier to sew. So I'm going to turn it to the wrong side. So that means the ridge is facing up here. Then I'm going to use an iron, but you don't want to use a super hot iron because you don't want to melt the plastic teeth. And what we're going to do is we're just going to gently push the teeth over a little bit. Now, it doesn't have to be totally flat, but I'm just pushing them over. So when the zip comes, it's a little bit like this. Sorry, I'm doing the right angle. And we're kind of pulling it open a little bit like this. I'll be honest, I sometimes skip this step, but it is a good one for beginners. So just make sure your iron isn't mega hot because it can melt the plastic. Okay, and this is going to make it a little bit more easy for the zip to actually be invisible. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our shell. So this is the outside of view A. And I am going to, just for the sake of starting this, I'm going to take the left-hand side as you're looking at it and open it up and just have one layer here. So this is the left-hand side as you're looking at it, face up. So you now want to put your zipper face down onto the edge. So what that means is that if you see the pull, the actual dangly bit of the pull is on the right side. And this part, I don't even know what the shape of that is, but this flat piece is on the wrong side. So you want to have the zip right sides together with the center back. So I'm going to show you this. We've sort of zoomed in here so that you can see it as clearly as possible, but I will move it around as I'm putting it together. So a key thing is that at the top of an invisible zipper, I don't know how easy it is for you to see that, there is a plastic stopper and then the zip starts, the teeth start, and then there's this additional section which is about 5/8 of an inch at the top. So you want this plastic stopper to be more or less 1/2 inch down from the top. It can be ever so slightly more than 1/2 inch is okay, but you don't want it less than that because we're going to later be sewing across here at 1/2 inch. So you want the plastic stopper to be not get caught in that 1/2 inch. And to be honest, you can just line up the top of the tape. That works fine. The top of the tape is more or less 5/8, which means that the top of this stopper will be just over 1/2 inch out. So now I'm going to continue to pin the zipper down. Now, as you do this, you can keep the zipper tape aligned with this edge of the center back. So we have already finished the center back. And you want to keep on going down. Now, as I'm doing this, the smooth edge of the zipper tape is on this side and the teeth are on this side. Okay, and then I'm keeping on going down. Okay, and then you get towards the bottom and you just put that final one in here. Okay, so now what we are going to do, so you can see the other side is here. So this is what it looks like. So right side with the dangly bit facing the right side of the fabric, pinned all the way up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew this side of the zipper to the garment. So when you're sewing, we are sewing just on the side of the teeth. So you definitely don't want to sew through the teeth. If you sew through the zipper teeth, you won't be able to use the zip. But you don't want to sew all the way over in the middle here, because then lots of the zipper tape will show on the outside. So you want to get as close to the zip teeth as you can without actually touching them. Now, as a beginner, you want to earn more on not touching them than you do getting close, because if you touch them, the garment, you can't wear the garment, so that's a huge problem. If you get a bit further away and your zip can be a bit more seen on the outside, you know, whatever, that's fine, especially because you're going to use a coordinating zipper tape color, unlike me. So if I don't do this perfectly, which, you know, spoiler alert, I won't do right now, but if I don't do it perfectly, you would really be able to see it. But if you picked a similar zipper color to this, then you actually wouldn't see. And generally, you want a zipper color that's a bit darker, if anything, than your fabric, because it's sitting in a bit of a shadow. And if the zipper tape is a little bit on the darker side, your brain just kind of reads it as like a bit of a shadow there. So that's my tip there. So we're going to go over to the machine and I'm going to show you how to sew with a zipper foot. So we are now going to change out our presser foot for a zipper foot. So this is a zipper foot. There's also something called an invisible zipper foot, but I'm actually going to show you how to do this just using a regular zipper foot because I think it can work just as well and it's a little bit easier as a beginner. So depending on your machine, there's different ways to take this off. Sometimes you're taking the whole piece off and sometimes just this. So here I have a little lever and I press it and it drops off. Now, this can go on two ways. It can go here or here, depending on what side of the zip you're doing. I often forget which side it should be, so I just try and see if it works. So I think it's this side. So I lower the presser foot and it grabs onto it, and when I lift it up, it's now connected. So how this works is this foot is allowing you to get really, really close with your stitching. You want the edge of the hard zipper teeth to be just on the outside of here. And basically this foot is helping you stay straight because you will constantly run the zipper teeth down the edge just here. And then you can see, if I just push it down, that the needle is in exactly the right place to be very, very close to there. Now, this can be a bit tricky and it can be tricky to get it right first time. So what I recommend is that you first baste it in. So what that means is just go up to the longest stitch length you have. So in my case, it's 4. We're not going to back stitch. We're just going to go down. Then we're going to check, see if it did it right. If it did, we will re-sew with a smaller stitch because basting stitches aren't strong enough for daily wear and tear. And if it is wrong, then it's going to be really easy to unpick it. So no back stitching. And as I do this, again, I'm going to take out pins, make sure it's even, and then just keep these zipper teeth butted up against there. So a lot of people are scared of sewing zips, but as you can see, it's not actually that difficult. If you don't have a zipper foot, you can theoretically do this with a regular foot, but you have to go very slowly and very carefully to get in the right place. That said, I will say, I think 99% of sewing machines come with a zipper foot, so there's a high chance you have one. And if you don't, it really is something worth buying. Okay, and when you get towards the bottom, you're not going to be able to sew all the way to the very bottom because this gets in the way, but that's not a problem. We're going to resolve that later. So go as far as you can go okay? And then for basting anyway, we're not going to backstitch. So now you can see that I have that stitch there. Now, here is the way that you check if you went too close to the zipper teeth, you zip it up. So you go to the bottom and it kind of flips over and you zip up like this. And look, there we go. So what that tells me is that I didn't stitch over the zipper teeth because I'm able to zip it up. If I wasn't able to zip it up, then I would have to unpick the basting and do it again. So I'm gonna undo it, open it out again, and now I'm going to go over that stitch line again, and this time I'm going to use a 2.5 length, and I'm going to backstitch. Okay, so that's the first side sewn. Okay, so the first side is sewn on here. Now, this next part is probably the trickiest part, and it's helpful if you can see the whole zip. So I'm turning it around here. So what I need to do is I need to bring the other side round as well, so that they are facing each other. So we have the other side of the back lined up here. So let me just get it as clean as possible so you can see what's going on. Okay, so now you do the double flip, and it's not very intuitive, and I think when you're a beginner it's very hard to be like, did I do this right? But if you do it slowly, you will get there, and you can also test to make sure you've done it right. So the first thing I'm going to do is flip this zipper over. So I'm flipping it over so that the right side is now up on this side, and here is the pull, okay? And then I'm going to flip it over again. So now I'm going to flip it over again, and I'm going to line it up with the other center back. So I'm going to do this again now because this is the single most confusing thing, and hopefully I can make it not confusing. So this is what we've sewn in so far. The whole zipper is right sides down here. I am flipping this over just this one side. So now the pull is facing up. And then I'm flipping it over one more time. So the bottom is now kind of a bit twisted. The edge of the zipper tape wants to be with the edge here, and the teeth are on this side. This is the right sides are together. So now we are going to pin in exactly the same way. Now, the important thing here is they need to be pinned at exactly the same heights on the dress. Otherwise, it will kind of skew the back of the dress. The nice thing is that because we just used the top of the zipper tape here, we can just use the top of the zipper tape here as our marking point. So, going to go down. Now, you got to make sure you're only pinning the center back. You're not going through the other layers. And the nice thing with zips is, although it can be a little bit confusing or a bit tricky the first time you do it, you can baste them, you can hand baste them, you can machine baste them to make sure that they're working correctly, and you can redo it as many times as you want, so you can always go back and try again. So it's just not something you need to worry about too much, because if you do it wrong, it doesn't matter. So when you get to the bottom, you're going to see that this is almost like twisted at the very bottom, because it's almost like this piece is like flipped, but that's okay, that's how it's meant to be. Now, to check that this works right, it's a good idea to try zipping it up before you do the final sewing. However, zipping it up when there are pins in it is actually very difficult. What's easier is to baste it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to baste it again. Then we're going to try doing the zip up, see if it works. If it doesn't, and believe me, the first probably 10 times I ever did an invisible zip, it wasn't right, then you can rip the basting out and try again. I know this one is right because I just did it, but I'm going to show you how to baste it and how to check first. So back over to the sewing machine. So now we are sewing this side, and slightly unusually, we're going to sew with the fabric on the right side of the needle. You don't usually do that, and there is another way to do it, but I think for beginners, this is the easiest. But what you can see now is that now the zipper teeth are on the other side. This presser foot is no longer in the right place. So I need to move it over to the other setting. So I'm going to let it go, move it over to the other bar, and pick it up. So once again, I'm going to place it with the zipper teeth butting up against the edge, and I've set it to a basting stitch. Another thing you can do is keep it in place with Wonder Tape, the double-sided dissolvable tape I've been showing you, which is actually really helpful for this. With the basting, it doesn't matter if it isn't 100% perfect. We just want to see if we've put it round the right way. Okay, so I've basted that in. So now what we do, so it's a bit confusing at this point because you have a zip that's connecting some of the back, but not all of it. So what you want to do is just go down, get your zip pull and give it a go. So zip it up. See if you can zip it all the way up. And I can. Then at the top, it should look a bit like this. So there should be at least 1/2 inch at the top here. The top should line up. So you don't want one down here and one up there. So if you did, you need to rip out the basting and repin it on. But here, mine are like meeting perfectly at the top. So yeah, so that's what it's going to look like. So I'm going to open it up. And now I'm going to do the final stitching. So I'm going to go back down to a 2.5, and this time I will backstitch. Okay, so our zipper is now installed. So you can see the idea is that it's invisible because you can't see it on the outside here. If I pull the fabric apart, you can start seeing the tape. So, you know, you can also sew closer, or if this was matching the color, you wouldn't really see it. And I'm just checking that it can open. Yep. So that's all fine. So now we have this open piece at the bottom of the zip. So now we're gonna sew that shut. So the way we do that is the first thing we're going to turn the whole dress to the wrong side. So I've turned it to the wrong side and you can see the zip on the wrong side here. And then if we go down, we can see this gap here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the whole thing in half along the center back seam. So the zip is now at the edge and I'm going to extend the open piece down here. And then I'm basically going to pin and then sew this back seam. So you want to make sure that it's lining up at the end. And what's going to happen is the seam allowance is going to flip up and the zip is actually going to be sandwiched in the middle. So you want to start pinning just underneath the zipper. And then you just want to pin all the way down here. So sometimes you might find by the time you get to this end that there's a tiny bit off here. You're actually better off not to pull the fabric because you'll end up with buckling here, which doesn't look very well. Good. So I'm actually just going to leave that, and I will trim this to make it more even later. It's more important that this lies totally flat. So we are going to sew down this back. Now, a crucial thing is where you start sewing. So here is the end of the zipper sewing line. There is still free zipper here. Okay, so this is the end bit that you didn't sew. You want to start sewing at a 1/2 inch seam allowance from the edge, and you want to start just a bit above that zip. So 1/2 inch in is roughly here, and you want to start before. So if you can see, the zip stitching ends here, and I'm going to start here. And what this does basically is ensures that you don't have a gap at the bottom of the zip. So let's go over and sew it. Okay, so the zipper foot is actually still really useful for this step, for getting close enough. So you want to fold the zipper like this so that the seam allowances are coming out like that, as evenly as you can. It's a little bit of a playing with it. Place it underneath, and then the zipper inside, where there's a ridge, is what's against this part here. Now, actually, sorry, I need to go over. You also are now sewing at 1/2 inch from the edge. So it's a little bit tricky to begin with, and you might even want to mark on, like, how far is this from the edge. I can kind of eyeball it, but it's about here. So for this first bit, it's going to be really helpful having the zipper foot. As you get lower down, you don't technically need it, but don't worry about it. You can still use it. So we'll do a back stitch. And then just continue down. So remember, the presser foot looks a bit different than you're used to. So just make sure that you're still using the 1/2 inch seam allowance marking on your machine here. Okay, so that seam is now sewn. I'm just going to change out to a regular presser foot again for the next step. So this seam is now sewn, and we're going to press it. So the first thing we're going to do is press it flat. And the next thing we're going to do is press it open, which is actually something I think is quite the satisfying bit of an invisible zipper. So we're going to lay the whole dress out. Now, if you were doing this on an ironing board, you would like put it over the ironing board so that you weren't pressing through the other side as well. I don't have a full ironing board here. It doesn't really matter, but that's what you would do. So we're going to just open these seam allowances, and what you can see is now it's just like a really nice continuous line down from the invisible zipper. I'm going to press the seam allowances open. And then I recommend pressing the sides of the zipper too. So again, you need to be careful. You don't want to have too hot an iron. You don't want to melt your zipper. But I'm just basically, I don't want to move those, pressing flat. Okay, so you have this really pretty invisible zipper now. Some people like to do a few hand stitches to secure the end, but because we're adding lining, you're never going to see that. So it's not really something you need to do. I am then actually going to turn it round to the right side. Okay, so this is the right side, and can you see my invisible zipper? Not really. It starts here. It's almost invisible, I would say. Okay, so now I'm just going to press from the right side. My almost invisible zipper, which isn't bad given that it's a contrasting color. So there is your invisible zipper in your shell. You did it. Many people are very scared by these and put them off, but you know, really wasn't that difficult. If you'd like to see more videos to help you learn to sew, head over to cashmere.com/learn to sew. And I highly recommend picking up a copy of my book, Sewing the Curve. I wrote this book so that curvy people like me could learn how to make a wardrobe of garments that make you feel so confident and also fit well. I cover everything from setting up your sewing machine to understanding sewing patterns and fabric, all the way to making your first garment. It comes with 6 full-size sewing patterns in sizes 12 to 32 and cup sizes C to H. So if you're thinking about sewing, you're excited about it, but you're uncertain where to begin, I really recommend picking up a copy of Sewing the Curve.